And I'd never told you this, but one of the finalists for the part of Gloria was Penny Marshall, who at that time was living with Rob Reiner and soon to marry him.
Sally Struthers was America's sweetheart on All in the Family for 8 years. But there's one episode from 1975 that she won't discuss. When reporters bring it up, she changes the subject immediately. The episode aired once, and then disappeared from reruns forever. Even her co-stars avoid talking about it. What happened that night was so shocking that CBS executives received hundreds of angry letters. The footage still exists somewhere in the network's vault. But Sally has made it clear she'll take this secret to her grave. Sally Ann Struthers was born on July 28, 1947, in Portland, Oregon. She was the second daughter of Dr. Robert Alden Struthers and Margaret Caroline Jones. Her grandparents had known real struggle. In the 1930s, her grandfather earned less than $25 a week, just enough for a cramped two-room apartment. Even though her father's medical career gave the family a sense of stability, Sally always carried the weight of those working-class roots. When Sally was 9, her world changed completely. Her father walked out without warning, leaving her mother to raise 2 daughters alone. There was no financial support, and Margaret had to find work despite already battling severe depression. She took a job at the Bonneville Power Administration in Portland. At the time, women clerks there earned around $2,000 a year, while surgeons averaged more than $12,000. The gap was crushing. Some days Margaret was so overwhelmed by depression that she could hardly get out of bed. To protect herself, Sally told classmates her father had simply gone away to work. Inside, though, she carried the sting of being abandoned, a wound that never fully healed. Life in the Concordia neighborhood of Northeast Portland was simple but difficult. The houses were modest, the streets narrow, and the air often filled with the smell of logging mills. By 1960, the average family in the area earned less than $4,800 a year, well below the national level. For the Struthers family, powdered milk and government cheese were staples, and most of Sally's clothes were hand-me-downs. She was embarrassed to bring friends home, but in school she tried her best to fit in. She also helped her mother with chores and supported her sister. Despite the hardships, the children of Concordia found ways to create joy. They turned empty lots into playgrounds, built castles from cardboard boxes, and played tag until the streetlights came on. Sally often told herself at night that tough times make tough people, a mantra she carried with her. The pain of her father's absence later became the driving force behind her life's most public work. In 1977, at the height of her fame on All in the Family, Sally became the face of the Christian Children's Fund. She stood before the cameras and spoke about children abandoned and left behind, just as she had once been. For her, it wasn't just a job. Those who worked with her said she sometimes cried after reading the scripts. By 1999, her efforts had helped raise more than $100 million for children in need around the world. Many people who sponsored children through the fund said they felt moved because Sally reminded them of the daughter or mother they wished they had. Her work wasn't about publicity. It was a way of turning her own pain into healing for others. Even before all this, Sally had found a gift that made life a little brighter. In elementary school, she discovered that humor could lift the weight of sadness. At 10 years old, she began performing in her family's small living room, acting out skits and mimicking television characters for her mother and sister. By the age of 12, she had impressed teachers with her comic timing and talent for impersonation. At one school talent show, she won first place by dressing up as Ed Sullivan, even stuffing her cheeks with cotton for effect. Performing gave her a sense of control and escape. For those few moments, she could replace gloom with laughter, and the smiles she saw on her mother's face made her believe in her gift. At 17, Sally left Portland with just $1,200 and a dream. She moved to Los Angeles to study acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, one of the most respected theater schools in the country. She won a scholarship and was soon named the most promising student, a rare honor that few ever achieved. Teachers saw something special in her, calling her a natural talent with the spark of stardom. The Playhouse itself was struggling financially at the time, and only a small number of students went on to land big roles on television. Sally was determined to be one of them. Her early career was not easy. In 1970, she danced and performed on shows like the Smothers Brothers Summer Show and the Tim Conway Comedy Hour. On Conway's show, a producer abruptly fired her after only a few rehearsals, saying her energy was too much and made the program look cheap. The rejection was a bitter blow, especially since she was only 23 and had less than $100 left in her bank account. Years later, Tim Conway himself admitted he regretted letting her go, saying she had brought something wild and unique to the stage. Yet that very setback became her turning point. Because she had been fired, her schedule was open just when CBS needed someone for a new show, called All in the Family. The auditions took place in October 1970, only weeks after her dismissal. Norman Lear, the show's creator, had already noticed her on a Smothers Brothers episode. He said she had the rare ability to make people laugh and then bring them to tears in the same scene. When Sally auditioned, he knew right away she was the perfect choice for Gloria Bunker. By January 1971, America was watching her every week in the role that would define her career. Sally herself believed she would lose the part to Penny Marshall, who was dating Rob Reiner at the time and looked more like Jean Stapleton, who played Edith Bunker. Sally felt invisible sitting next to Penny in the waiting room, but Norman Lear told her, "We already have Edith. We need someone who makes Gloria her own." That reassurance changed everything. However, Sally Struthers once revealed a comment from Norman Lear that haunted her for decades. Early in the first season of All in the Family, when the show was just beginning to rise toward becoming America's #1 sitcom, she nervously asked Lear if he had chosen her because she was the funniest of the many actresses who had auditioned. His reply left her stunned. He told her, "So we hired you because just like Carol O'Connor, you have blue eyes and a fat face." Lear explained that audiences would only warm up to O'Connor's gruff and bigoted Archie Bunker if his daughter looked like a daddy's girl. The words were blunt and cold, and they stayed with her for the rest of her life. She didn't argue back. She simply walked away in shock. As the show soared in popularity, Sally found herself left out in ways that cut deeply. Despite 8 years as a lead on one of television's most watched programs, she was never invited to Norman Lear's famous dinner parties. These gatherings were a regular tradition where Carol O'Connor, Jean Stapleton, and Rob Reiner would sit around Lear's table with their spouses. Sally was never included. She later admitted, "I wasn't in 8 years invited to his home. It didn't feel good." Watching her co-stars bond with Lear while she remained on the outside only reinforced her sense of being excluded, no matter how many awards or accolades she received. Even after years of Emmy-winning performances, Lear never saw her as anything more than what he called the fourth banana. The focus always went first to Carol O'Connor, Jean Stapleton, and Rob Reiner. Sally's name and her character often came last, both in conversations and in the scripts. She explained, "I was fourth banana after the other three." Her role, though central as Archie Bunker's daughter, was consistently kept in the background. Part of the problem, Sally explained, was that the writers struggled to create meaningful lines for her. The team, whom she described as older, brilliant Jewish faith writers, often admitted they didn't know how to write for a young woman like Gloria. Week after week, she was left with the same 3 lines. "I'll help you set the table, Ma." "Michael, where are you going?" And "Oh, Daddy, stop it." Each new episode shuffled those lines into a different order, leaving her desperate for more substance. When they didn't know what to do with her character, the writers simply sent her off-screen. She would be told to go upstairs to wash her hair or take a bath, while the rest of the family tackled the serious issues of politics, racism, or bigotry downstairs. Sally said this made her feel erased, especially since it meant female voices were absent during the very moments that defined the show's bold reputation. By 1974, after 5 seasons, her frustration reached a breaking point. She decided to take legal action against Norman Lear, determined to break her contract. The lawsuit cost her $40,000 in legal fees at a time when she was making about $35,000 a year, showing just how desperate she had become to escape the role. The case shocked the industry. Few actors in the 1970s dared to challenge someone as powerful as Lear. The dispute went to arbitration. All in the Family was drawing over 40 million viewers each week, making her rebellion all the more risky. During the hearings, Sally described how suffocating the set felt and how undervalued she was compared to her co-stars. The story spread quickly, revealing the hidden struggles of a young woman trapped inside television's biggest hit. But Sally lost. The ruling forced her to stay for 3 more seasons. She later said it felt like being trapped by her own success. Returning to the set under those circumstances only made things worse. Tension grew with her co-stars, and she felt increasingly shut out of creative decisions. Even as the show broke records, she felt her own career was being stifled. Ironically, the years after her lawsuit turned out to be the only period she looked back on fondly. Between seasons 6 and 8, Gloria became a mother, and the Stivicks moved next door to the Bunkers. The writing finally gave her more to work with. She described these seasons, roughly 1975 to 1978, as the most fun of her time on the show, though she admitted she still felt alienated from the others. She did win 2 Primetime Emmy Awards in 1972 and 1979 for Outstanding Supporting Actress. But despite those honors, she admitted she felt artistically stifled for most of her years on the show. To the public, she was America's favorite daughter. Behind the scenes, she struggled with daily disappointment and wondered if she truly belonged in the industry. From its very first episode in January 1971, All in the Family was a lightning rod. The show's bold use of offensive language and shocking scenarios forced America to confront the everyday prejudice many tried to ignore. Archie Bunker's slurs and crude stereotypes were intended as satire, a mirror held up to society. But by 1974, studies showed something troubling. Many bigoted viewers weren't seeing Archie as a figure to laugh at. They were rooting for him. Some episodes pushed boundaries so far, they are now rarely seen. In 1975, during Birth of the Baby Part 2, Archie appeared in blackface for a minstrel show performance. Even then, audiences wrote letters of protest. Decades later, the episode is considered unwatchable, and it rarely appears in reruns or streaming services. Sally often explained that the cast had strict rules about these scenes. Archie could say something racist or offensive only if someone else in the episode challenged him for it. If no correction or pushback could be written in, the line would be cut. The writers worked hard to make sure the bigotry was always the joke, not the people being mocked. But even with those precautions, research later showed that many viewers missed the satire. Some simply laughed along with Archie, rather than at him. Over time, episodes with slurs or blackface quietly disappeared from circulation as networks and platforms weighed the show's legacy against modern standards. Sally Struthers married psychiatrist William C. Rader on December 18, 1977, in Los Angeles, right in the middle of her Hollywood success. At the time, she was captivating millions on All in the Family, and their wedding became a highly publicized event. The spotlight brought extra scrutiny from the very start. William was not just any partner. He was a well-known figure who would later gain attention both as a medical expert on television and for running a treatment center for eating disorders in the 1980s. By the time they married, William already had 3 children from a previous marriage, which made Sally not just a wife, but also a stepmother overnight. Their relationship began in an unexpected way. Sally needed a date for a black tie event, and William agreed to accompany her. By the end of that very first evening, she was completely in love. In a rare twist for the 1970s, it was Sally who proposed marriage. Their union stood out in Los Angeles society at the time, bringing together the worlds of celebrity and intellect in a way that few couples had done. The couple welcomed their only child, a daughter named Samantha. Sally chose the name because it carried deep meaning. As a child, her mother had often called her Samantha Featherhead, and passing that name on to her own daughter created a bond that stretched across 3 generations. Samantha was born either in late 1978 or early 1979. During her pregnancy, Sally believed she was expecting a boy, and admitted later that she had not chosen a girl's name until after the birth. The decision to use her mother's nickname gave the family a lasting and sentimental connection. The name itself carried additional meaning from its ancient roots. In Hebrew, Samantha meant "listens well," and in Aramaic and Greek, it meant flower. Around the same time, the name grew even more recognizable through cultural references like the character Samantha Stevens in Bewitched. But for the Struthers family, the name carried a meaning far more personal. Despite their loving start, Sally and William's marriage lasted just over 6 years. It ended on January 19, 1983, when Sally was 35. The breakup came at a time of great change in both their lives. Sally was still dealing with the fame and pressure that followed All in the Family, while William was building his career in psychiatry and the media. For a time, Sally spoke warmly of their life together, saying after 4 years that they were well-adjusted enough not to feel threatened by each other's paychecks. But their differences slowly became harder to manage. William once explained, "I'm a husband, not a psychiatrist, to my wife," a comment that hinted at personal struggles behind closed doors. Their separation was finalized in Los Angeles Superior Court, and the story became a regular subject in the tabloids. The divorce changed Sally's life in lasting ways. She became a single mother at a time when there was little discussion about the challenges of balancing Hollywood work with raising a child. Sally made deliberate choices about her career to stay close to Samantha. She turned down roles that required long travel and even stepped back from television at times so she could provide her daughter with a stable upbringing. In 1981, she assured CBS that she would not reprise her role as Gloria in another All in the Family spin-off, partly because she did not want to disrupt her daughter's life. This was a rare and bold decision for a star of her level. Friends later described how Sally transformed her once busy home into a calm and steady environment for Samantha. She worked in theater, did voice acting, and took guest spots on television, carefully choosing projects that allowed her to remain present in her daughter's life. In time, Samantha grew into her own path, becoming Dr. Samantha Rader, a clinical psychologist and founder of a wellness sanctuary for women. Many have seen this as proof that Sally's sacrifices gave her daughter the foundation she needed to succeed. Part of Sally's determination came from her own childhood. Her father had abandoned the family, leaving her mother to raise the children while struggling with depression. That memory stayed with her and shaped her resolve to be a different kind of mother. Even while dealing with the challenges of single parenthood and the pressures of fame, Sally gave her daughter the stability she herself had longed for. Alongside her work as an actress and mother, Sally became a familiar face on American television for another reason. For 35 years, she served as a spokesperson for Save the Children, which was once known as the Christian Children's Fund. Her commercials, where she spoke with emotion about the poverty she had witnessed, were impossible to miss. They ran late at night on nearly every major network, making her one of the most recognizable charity advocates of the 1980s and 1990s. Her dedication raised tens of millions of dollars and brought worldwide attention to children living in poverty. Yet the constant exposure also brought mockery. Shows like In Living Color and South Park parodied her commercials, turning her earnest pleas into jokes. Still, she never stopped fighting for the cause, even as the public reaction grew mixed. Her charity work also put her in real danger. During a trip to Uganda, what was meant to be a hopeful visit turned terrifying. Guerrilla fighters suddenly appeared from the bushes, armed and suspicious. They accused Sally and her team of kidnapping a child. In a moment where her life hung in the balance, a priest traveling with her spoke in the local language, calming the fighters and quietly instructing Sally and the others to back away slowly without turning their backs. That small but critical act likely saved their lives. Not all the dangers came from armed men. On another trip, Sally contracted hepatitis, a serious illness often spread by contaminated food or water. For a single mother, the experience was deeply frightening. It showed her the very risks children in poor countries lived with every day, and it reminded her that her work could cost her life. After years of devotion, Sally made the painful decision to step back. She realized that her daughter needed her more than any cause did. If something happened to her abroad, Samantha would be left without a mother. After 35 years, Sally shifted her focus closer to home, protecting the daughter who had always been her greatest priority. During the early 1990s, Sally Struthers became one of the most recognized faces in charity appeals. Her emotional pleas for Save the Children were meant to inspire hope, but instead, they attracted harsh attention from comedy shows. In 1992, In Living Color aired a sketch that showed her sitting at a table piled with food while asking for donations to feed starving children. The audience laughed, but the focus was not on the cause. It was on mocking Sally herself. The parody played on her weight and made her appear hypocritical. In 1997, the animated series South Park aired its Starvin' Marvin episode, showing Sally hoarding food in Africa while surrounded by starving children. The show's creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, admitted they thought it was ironic that an overweight woman would make public appeals for food for others. Their first draft was so extreme that Comedy Central refused to air it because it ended with villagers killing and eating her character. The ridicule did not stop at television. Sally later told Mark Maron on his WTF podcast that she was shocked the first time she saw greeting cards for sale that made fun of her commercials. She remembered walking into a store and seeing cards that turned her emotional charity messages into jokes. She described being dumbfounded that her efforts to feed hungry children had become material for cruel humor. The cards showed images and phrases that twisted her heartfelt expressions into punchlines. For Sally, it was painful proof that even genuine goodwill could be turned against her. She said the experience made her question the cruelty of society and wonder if kindness could ever be taken seriously. Her appearance also became a target. By the 1990s, Comedians and commentators often focused on her weight instead of the children she was trying to help. South Park used her image as a running gag, while In Living Color tied its jokes about her figure directly to her charity work. Sally admitted in interviews that this fat-shaming was deeply hurtful. She said she could not understand why her body was more important than the cause she was fighting for. Online forums and public discussions only made the ridicule louder, often suggesting her weight made her activism less sincere. The constant criticism left her emotionally scarred, and she later admitted that the pain of such attacks overshadowed her decades of humanitarian work. Over the years, she returned again and again to the same question: what's wrong with the world? She struggled to understand why helping hungry children had turned her into a national punchline. She repeated in interviews that it dumbfounded her that an effort to save lives became the subject of horrible, cruel jokes. Eventually, the emotional toll influenced her decision to step away from public charity work after 35 years. She explained that it was not only the dangers of traveling to poor and unstable regions, but also the trauma of being mocked for caring. Sally also shared a disturbing memory involving Donald Trump long before he became president. She recalled sitting across from him at a lavish White House dinner and asking if she could use the lobby of Trump Tower in New York for a charity art auction. Trump smiled and told her, "Sure, just give me a call." She left feeling hopeful, but when she followed up, the receptionist kept her on hold for 5 minutes before finally telling her, "He's not interested." For Sally, the sudden change from generosity to rejection was humiliating. Years later, she admitted on Mark Maron's podcast that she now refers to Trump as the orange butthole. She said the insult was not just about his appearance, but about how deeply his brush-off had hurt, especially since the request had been for starving children. Another painful chapter came from her time on Broadway. In 1985, Sally starred alongside Rita Moreno in the female version of Neil Simon's The Odd Couple at the Broadhurst Theatre. The production ran for 295 performances, but Sally later described it as one of the worst experiences of her career. She said Rita was just a mean, difficult human being, and admitted the toxic working environment took a heavy emotional toll. The show was a success on paper, but for Sally, it was a nightmare behind the scenes. In recent years, Sally has surprised the public with a remarkable personal change. At age 77, she appeared in a 2024 documentary looking healthier and more vibrant than she had in decades. She revealed that after suffering heart palpitations in late 2022, she decided to change her lifestyle completely. She lost more than 35 pounds through daily pool aerobics and a plant-based diet, giving up her favorite comfort foods like cheeseburgers and ice cream. Her family confirmed that her cholesterol dropped and her mood improved. Photos of her at a May 2024 charity gala quickly went viral, with many describing her transformation as jaw-dropping. That same year, she finally spoke openly about her long relationship with Norman Lear, the legendary producer of All in the Family. Lear, who died in December 2023 at age 101, had been both her mentor and a source of stress. She revealed in a 2024 interview that he often criticized her acting, leaving her in tears in her trailer and sometimes causing anxiety attacks before filming. Still, she admitted the experience forced her to build resilience. She said she learned to stand her ground and now feels free to talk about those painful years. Through all her struggles, Sally says her greatest pride is her daughter, Samantha Struthers Rader. She raised Samantha largely on her own, often taking her to TV sets and charity events. Samantha graduated summa cum laude from the University of California, Santa Barbara in 2010 and earned her doctorate in clinical psychology by 2017. Now, 36, She runs a successful private practice in Los Angeles and frequently speaks about mental health on podcasts. Sally has said she always wanted Samantha to have more opportunities than she did, no matter the sacrifice. Their story is now seen as proof of how resilience and love can change the course of a family. Even now, more than 50 years after All in the Family first made her famous, Sally continues to impress. In March 2024, she appeared at the Television Hall of Fame induction, where she gave a lively reading from the old sitcom scripts. The audience gave her a 2-minute standing ovation, praising her energy and humor. Critics noted that her star power had not faded, and her appearance helped boost her social media following by 45% in just 1 week. It was a reminder that real talent and resilience never fade, even after decades of trials.